Another con is with Biden is that the guy is so committed to a vision and an idea of America that we do not live in anymore. He's very much like 1970s, 1980s ideas. It's 2020. It's a 78-year-old man. And I'm not saying he's like incapable of doing the job. I'm literally saying like the guy has got the mindset that it's 1985. It's not 1985. We can't have our politics be that way. That's always something I've been against. I'm so wish more younger people would get in, but I understand why. The pros for Biden is calm. I think Biden is a calming figure. A lot of people are sick of this shit. They just are. And I don't blame them, which is that most people just want to live their lives. Most people want to think less about politics. What you were just saying about how you're never into politics and then people, all of a sudden Trump got elected and everyone's into politics, that's probably miserable for you and a lot of people. And a lot of people don't. Yeah, people hate it.
Welcome to the Lone Star Play Podcast. I'm your host, Patrick Scott Armstrong. Join me and a famous guest every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We discuss their career, life, food, Texas, and everything in between. Let's get started. All right, guys, how we doing? Welcome to another episode of the Lone Star Play Podcast. I'm your host, Patrick Scott Armstrong. Yep, those are some cards I'm tapping on the table. We have a special episode. These are my notes, right? They got the notes here, so I know what I'm talking about now. I'm going to start having these notes. Okay, our guest is Saagar Enjeti. I'm going to read you a little bio so you kind of know about him, and then I'll go into a little bit about it. Okay, you might know who he is. Who knows here? Okay, so this is from the Steamboat Institute website. There's something I found about him. I sort of thought this explains him perfectly, gives you a little backstory about him. And of course, you're going to listen to the podcast and learn a little bit more about his backstory. Okay, Saagar Enjeti is a Washington correspondent and host of Rising at The Hill TV. He was just named 2019-20 Tony Blakely Fellow by Steamboat Institute. Saagar is also a media fellow at the Hudson Institute in Washington, D.C., where he co-hosts the Realignment podcast. Saagar previously served as White House correspondent for the Daily Caller and foreign affairs correspondent for the D.C. News Foundation. Saagar received his master's degree in U.S. National Security Policy from Georgetown University and his bachelor's in economics from the George Washington University. Saagar studied extensively across the globe, spanning 3 continents, and has visited over 40 countries. Whew. That's a lot, okay? I've lived in 3 countries. I've not visited that many, to be honest with you, outside of the ones I've lived in. Okay, so that's incredible. Yeah, he's got a long history. And look, also, he's interviewed President Trump 4 times. I thought that was pretty incredible. So look, he hosts a show with Krystal Ball. I think I mentioned that in there. It's a great show. It basically pits Democrat Krystal Ball and Republican Saagar, or maybe liberal and conservative, however they want to put it. But they just have open, honest conversations, dialogue. They both sort of aren't afraid to, criticize their own side, the other side, every side, whoever needs it, right? I like that. I think a lot of people like that. It's not a biased sort of news show. It's sort of right in the middle. What's not to like about that? It's tough, with the media out there, right? With news, and it just depends where you are, what you like to watch. You trust everything coming out of it. Is it too emotional? Is it too, end of the world, apocalyptic? These are the things we discuss. Look, I'm not saying it's one way or the other. I'm just saying we have the conversation, okay? We talk a little bit about that. We also talk about the debates coming up, which we're going to drop this episode on the first debate with President Trump and Joe Biden, okay? So they're going to have the first debate, and this episode is going to drop on the same day. So, so we talk a little bit about that. And he also did something really cool, which is, listen to the end. He basically breaks down 2 pros and 2 cons for each candidate, for President Trump and for Joe Biden. I'm going to tell you something. It's just a really good breakdown of each one. So even if you're a fan of Joe Biden, you can see maybe some of the flaws he has and what he needs to work on, right? If you think he needs to be the one that needs to win, and vice versa for Trump. So it was a really cool breakdown. Look, he's a conservative, right? He votes Republican. I would think most of the time, maybe independent too. But you know, the fact that he could say these good things about Joe Biden just showed a lot about him. You know, so I just trust kind of what he says. Now, it doesn't mean I have to agree with it, but I trust it. Okay. And that's where we need to get to. So it's a great conversation. I know this is a really long opening, but you know, this is a special episode. I was really excited to get Saagar on. It's just literally kicking back in my, you know, pajamas. I almost said whitey tighties, but I don't wear whitey tighties, so I don't know why I would say that. You know, kicking back, watching the show as always, and just he said something about Texas, being from Texas. Oh, my home state. What? I didn't know he's from Texas. So we contacted him. We got him on the show within a few days. It was awesome. So you know, I was really excited about it. We also talked about, look, the Black Lives Matter movement and the protest versus the riot and everything that's happening there. We talked about a show and growing up in Texas as well. So, and we talked a little bit about, I don't know what that was. We talked a little bit about food as well. So, you know, just a really cool conversation. And of course, as always, my dogs decided to interrupt. Not as always, right? I don't think that's even happened. Maybe a couple times. You know, it's happened. I think I said it had never happened, but it's happened a couple times. Maybe. Not like this. There was a storm when we did the episode, and it was thundering in my house. And, you know, maybe that was, you know, sort of like poetic to the interview we were having. I don't know. It never got heated. Obviously, you know, we that's not the conversation we're going to have, right? I wanted to hear him out, and I respect a lot of what he has to say. Again, even if I don't agree with everything he has to say, I trust what he has to say. So, yeah, my dogs jumped up. They were, you know, kind of interrupted us for just a minute, but they really they hung out on the floor in the podcast. So you might hear them breathing, or a bark, or a sniffle, or a, you know, yelp. You know, they were a little worried. So anyway, I was there for them. Don't worry. Saagar's a dog lover, so we love him. Okay, so look, enough of me babbling. As always, this is what I do. Let's just get to the episode. Okay, let's do it. Sit back, get a tea. I feel like this is an episode where you need a hot tea, you know, maybe a newspaper, like the Wall Street Journal or something. Get a sport coat on, ladies, maybe a nice dress, or whatever. Sport coat too. Yeah, I'm not trying to be gender specific here. You know, whatever. Dress up. That's what I'm trying to say. Sit back. This is a dress up episode, or just kick back and listen to it like you do all of them. All right, but before we get to that, okay, don't forget to follow us on social media. Okay, please check us out, Texas Real Food, and also our website. Yes, I always forget that. thelonestarplate.com. Okay, so check that out. And that's it, guys. All right, and don't forget to leave us a review if you can. Like, comment, follow, anything you can. We've been getting some great feedback, some great messages, some really moving stuff. And in fact, on the next episode, I'm going to be going over reading some of those comments. So please send us, you know, the stuff. Leave us I'll read them on the podcast. So, all right. Thank you so much for listening. As always, sit back and enjoy the episode. Saagar Enjeti. It's a wonderful one. Dressed up more than me.
I just did my show, so.
I just saw it.
Oh, really? Nice.
Yeah, I think so. Right, it's the ones you guys.
Yeah, on YouTube.
You guys release same day, right?
Yeah. This morning. We record like early in the morning, and we do it then.
I bet. How early do y'all record? So like 6, 7 in the morning.
7 to 10. Post to like 10:30 Eastern.
Yeah.
But you know, you got to do it. You got to wake up with the people. You just do.
Yeah.
Like I thought about. I was like, yeah, is there any other way? Like,
you know, first of all, thank you so much for coming. I've been, you know, a fan for so long, man. Been watching your show, and honestly, really, it was literally yesterday. I just was watching your show, and I just texted the team. I said, "He's from Texas. You made a comment on the show. Oh, my home. I didn't know that." I was like, "Oh, sure, he's from Texas. Okay, boom. Let's see if we can get him on the show." Here we are. This is crazy. Or just a few days ago. This is crazy. So again, thank you so much for coming, man.
Hey, it was my pleasure, man. That's right. I'm a native of College Station, Texas, born and raised. So I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, that's awesome. So College Station, where what you were, where were you born at exactly? Were you born in College Station too?
Yeah, born in Bryan, man. So my parents teach at A&M, right? So I'm one of the few people actually from College Station. So I think I was born in Bryan because there was no hospital in College Station
Yeah.
at that time. But I have physically lived in College Station until I was 16 years old. Then my last 2 years of high school, I actually went to high school in Qatar in the Middle East. But that's because A&M has a branch campus there. And my dad was one of the deans over there. It was like a temporary assignment, like 3 years. And so then my parents moved back to College Station. They're still there. And whenever I visit home, that's where I go.
Wow, that's awesome. Oh, I didn't know that. You know what? Actually, in a couple hours, I'm interviewing the ex-president of Texas A&M.
Which one?
Bowen Lofton, is that his name, right? Is that his name?
Right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's interesting. Well, that's cool. Yeah, most people aren't. I mean, I'm from Texas. I wasn't born here, but I, moved here at 6 months old. So I consider from the DFW area. So I consider myself a Texan. But yeah, nobody's really like from College Station in that sense, right? So when I think of that, I'm like, okay, nobody's really. But that's cool. So that's where you went. That's where you grew up. All right. So we get to a bit about you there. And your parents where are your parents from?
My parents are from India. So they moved. My dad got his PhD in Canada, and that's when my parents got married. And then they moved. So he's India, Canada, and then he had couple job offers. Apparently, one of them was in Sweden, and I think a lot about that. I'm like, wow, like imagine if he took that job in Sweden. I'd be Swedish. Like, what would that be? You know what I mean?
Awesome.
But thank God he didn't, and I grew up in Texas, so it all worked out.
What a boy, that is like the other side of the coin there. Sweden and Bryan, Texas. It's like,
yeah, man.
I love it. That's awesome. So what got you into politics? Like what made you, that's it. Are your parents into that as well? Or?
I was that guy, I was the political guy. That's it, just from early as I can remember. I remember the 2000 election. Thinking, and this is a Texas thing, because our governor was Bush, that's one of my, so I'm 28. This is like one of my earliest memories, political memories was Bush. I remember meeting Bush when I was a really small kid. I think he spoke, my mom got a PhD from A&M, and I think he spoke as governor at her graduation ceremony, like whenever she got her PhD. So I vividly kind of remember seeing him. It was like right before he announced for president. And then, of course, the Bush Center at Texas A&M, the library. So like College Station is like Bush country, Bush, the original Bush country. And I remember like we really caught up in the 2000 election and all of that. And so I just remember like the straw polls in elementary school, just reading the news, watching the debates, and like something about it just grabbed me. But this is kind of a sad answer, but what really got me into politics is 9/11, more than anything. 9/11, 9/11, Iraq, like all of that, just trying to wrap your head around what the hell is going on. And that took me like down a deep, deep road of trying to understand what was going on with the wars. I would definitely say like my anti-war stance is like the original reason why I'm in politics. And we can talk about that, more if you want. And it was complicated growing up, like I said, in College Station, kind of like holding these politics, and like definitely found myself at odds with some people, but it's a stance I maintain today. And look, that's why I am where I am right now, is because I just kept scratching the itch. I moved to Washington. I was 18 years old. I went to college here, got my master's here. So I've been here for a while. But I think it all starts with George W. Bush being our governor and just being interested. So maybe that's what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously I remember that time as well. 9/11, it was, brutal, right? That was just a brutal time. And absolutely. I think that got I know a lot of friends that went into the military because of that.
Right, exactly.
I graduated in 1998. So it's just a few years, after I graduated. Yeah. A lot of friends immediately joined the Marines, and people I'd never thought would be in the military, right? Just like, it's definitely life-changing, for sure. Mm-hmm. Well, that's an interesting, journey you've had to where you've gotten, for sure. I would say at this point, you've lived in Washington long enough. You're sort of, you're from there, right? Come on.
Yeah, I think. See, I get real. There are some Texan people here who are like, oh, I'm like, you lived here 20 years, man. You're in DC. You're like,
I think thing go though.
It's hard.
No, you can't. So that's what I would say. I'm from Texas, but I'm live in Washington, and like, yeah, like I culturally, like whatever, I think it's probably fair. I think the segment you're referencing about what I was talking about on the show is really interesting in terms of politics, just to bring it back to that, which is people ask me all the time. They're like, what's going on down there in Texas? Is it going to be blues? And I'm like, look, the state has changed a lot. Like the state, when I was growing up, it was all about Texas might be blue because it could minority, majority, all that stuff, like the Hispanic vote. But then W was also winning like 40% of the Hispanic vote back in the day. I think Abbott won 40% too, something around there. So it's not like it's a monolithic vote by any means, but it's this new influx of Californians and New Yorkers to Austin and to Houston and to Dallas. And I tell people, I'm like, listen, I go to Austin now. I mean, not the city I grew, like when I was a kid and we went to Austin, it was like, kind of, can I swear here? I don't know. Can I swear? Yeah, it was kind of a dump. Right? It was like a shithole. Like, yeah, it sucked. And then all of a sudden, like 10 years ago, Austin's awesome. Yep. And now it's like, I mean, I would rather live in Austin than I would in San Francisco. And so it's just like that is not the Texas I'm like calibrated and used to, but I've tried to stay in touch with a lot of the people who, a lot of my friends and stuff who still live there. And every time I visit, I'm just blown away by how different it is. Same with Houston. I mean, Houston is one of the fastest growing cities in the country. It's huge. And, like Houston is like such a weird culture because it's like sprawl. I'm always fascinated by it because of their zoning laws, because they have no zoning law there. So you can build like a house next to like a machine shop, which is next to like a school. Which kind of, it's a very Texan, Houston thing, which actually keeps the cost down, but also doesn't. It's like a very weird character to the city. So I think Houston is fascinating. Dallas too. I don't know all that much about Dallas. I haven't spent too much time there, but I mean, Dallas is a huge financial hub, right? And so I think about that too, and just from like emerging power centers in America and like how, like power is concentrated here in DC for sure. Power is concentrated in New York for sure, and in California, but it's moving in, and I think a lot of people, Texans included, people who grew up like me, are not really like used to thinking of themselves that way.
That's an interesting way to look at it. Yeah, you always sort of feel, if you're in the Midwest, my dad's from St. Louis, like if you're in the Midwest, right, you just feel, you can feel a little left out of what's happening, or whatever you see on the news isn't really a reflection of what's happening where you're at a lot of times, except for right now. That's a completely different situation. Now we're on the news. Now we're a part of the news, right? Like, in Austin specifically, especially with, Black Lives Matter and the protests they've had and that guy getting shot, Garrett, that's just crazy. Obviously I watch the show. I see a lot of where, you stand on it a little bit, but, for our listeners, maybe who don't know, if you want to kind of give us what you think about, it's the protest, that whole, I know you got something there lined up, so let us have it.
I've always got a lot of thoughts there. This is the ones that get me into the most in trouble. Look, I mean, the people I blame the most for this is actually, and not a lot of people say, I'm not going to be like, oh, the Democrats. Look, the person I blame the most for this whole thing is the Minneapolis mayor, because in those early days, when he let that Target get looted, and when it's the first day, second day is when the city burned. That police station burned, that was it. It's like a bat signal. That's the thing about chaos, is it spreads. It's like an infection. It's worse than a pandemic. It just goes like, spirals, spreads across the country. Then you have more of these officials who are afraid because they don't want to piss off, what they perceive as part of their coalition in order to do anything about it. And that's the person I blame the most, Jacob Frey. I think he's most responsible for the situation that we are in right now, because it blew and polarized one of the best moments in politics I ever saw, which was right after the murder of George Floyd and right before all the rioting and the looting started. Nobody thinks what happened to George Floyd is okay. Everybody thinks that Derek Chauvin, the officer, is a piece of shit who should rot in jail. And that was Sean Hannity was saying that. Tucker was saying that. Trump was saying that, right? Like the whole country was ready to see this cop rot, to actually see some justice get done, to, could have had some productive police reform. You start setting stuff on fire and you start defending that, you lose me, you lose most of the country. I mean, 83% of the country. Look, right now, Black Lives Matter has negative support, amongst white and Latinos. How did that happen? They had positive support 2 months ago. Well, what happened in the interim 2 months, right? Stuff started to burn. Austin, that horrible situation with that homeless guy. I mean, I don't know if you saw that, where they stole his stuff. I mean, it's just wanton violence and destruction for no reason. And a lot of people just don't have the courage to call it out. And it's sad, man. I mean, there are people who lost everything in this crisis from the rioting, and they will never be remunerated, and they will never even be seen. And this is just something that bothers me so much, is to look at people who put their whole life savings and all of that more into their businesses and into their, I mean, it's not just a business, it's not just the way you get money. It's like who you are for so many people, and just destroyed. And the media doesn't care. You know, they don't care. And that's the part that it just kills me. It really does.
Yeah, I agree, man. Look, I was a small business owner. I owned a food. That's why I moved to Austin. I had a food truck here for 5 years. I actually closed it. Last South by was my last event. So I was like, well, I'm done. I'm going to
remember that. I remember when they closed it, right?
Yeah, I'm going to get this. Well, not this past one, the one before last year.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
That one, it was fine. And I was done. So about 5 years, I ran the food truck and events and all that sort of thing. And you're right. It becomes who you are. I mean, that's what people associate Patrick as, from Boca, right? Like here in Austin, like that's how I'm associated. So yes, man, it absolutely pains me, because I agree with protesting, but I don't agree with burning down somebody's business. It's like, I'm just here trying to run a business. Why are you burning down my business? And this whole property, it's just property argument. I don't agree with that either. And yeah, you're right, man. It becomes people's identities, and you lose people in the movement when you start to stray off and fringe like that. You're right, because it stops to become about that movement. And now, you know, you're just creating more problems. I thought we were looking for solutions. I just don't see how creating more problems is going to get us there. And then people start dying, right? That is the ultimate loss there. There's no coming back from that. So yeah, you're right. It's brutal. Just brutal.
Yeah, it really is. And you know, that's the other weird part about Texas, is Austin has become so liberal. It's like you never used to think about it in terms of San Francisco, but the politics are the same as San Francisco. I think because all these San Franciscans moved there. And, you know, you're looking at some of the policy and like the mayor and the way this all, and look, I don't live there, and I'm not going to purport to speak on behalf of
full disclosure. I am a liberal, but it pains me to see what's happening, right? Either way, like I'm American first and a Texan. Really, I'm a Texan first. I'm American second. But so it does pain me. It does pain me to see my side doing these things, and obviously, I'm losing sight of what some of these policies are, and that I'm getting behind. Is it, you know what I mean? Like these movements, things start to become political.
Of course, yeah, right.
It makes me want to forget either side, to be frank with you.
That's what I try so hard on my show, to break things down about what's happening here, to explain, be like, what does this mean for you? Because what DC excels at is miring everything in bullshit so that people just tune out. Because if you tune out, then you're not going to understand that somebody took a vote to make sure you don't have more money.
You're right.
That's what people that's what people need to know. Who are the people who are actively opposed right now to making sure that you and anybody you know else in the business community doesn't get more relief, even though the government is the one who forced you to shut down? Here's the thing too, and I know this gets really hot, and in Texas in particular, I know this, about this whole shutdown, lockdown thing. Yeah. Look, right now, Governor Abbott actually has a 30-something% approval rating. And I think the reason is not because of the lockdown stuff. It's because he and many of the other Republicans, they did not try to force the federal government to remunerate businesses who they forced to close.
Exactly.
And then it turned into this whole, like, you got to reopen thing. Okay, you were a business owner, you're a restaurant owner, or in the food service industry. Can you run a business on 25% capacity? No. The restaurants in this country barely break even at 100% capacity.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
And I feel like I'm a crazy person because I live here and I have to interact with these people. And then the only fun part about living in DC is that in a way it's kind of fun because I get to confront them with their own talking points. Like I get to confront them with like my politics and all that, which they never hear on Capitol Hill and more. And it's funny. I was just talking to a Republican guy today, and I asked him, I said, look, he's one of these super anti-lockdown, reopen the economy stuff. And again, I accepted a legitimate position. I just said, hey, look, how do you explain that every Republican governor in the country who pursued what you said has an incredibly low approval rating? Like, how do you square that? And this is what he said. I love that dog, by the way. I should get mine.
Yeah, he said my dog.
I was like, how do you square that? And he's like, well, actually, it's conservative voters who are upset that they locked it down in the first place. I was like, there's no evidence for that. Zero. There's not a single piece of evidence that supports what you're saying. And I think it's so important. I mean, look, Texas is such an amazing place. I really think it will become the center of power in America.
Gosh,
I love that.
this is what
Oh, good. Keep it up, man. I love it. I love these dogs.
they never come in here. This is like
That's okay.
they must have known you were the Sheikh.
Let them talk into the mic. You know, I'm a dog guy, so.
There's a
Hey,
storm.
guys.
There's a storm here, so they're like
Oh, that's, yeah.
shaking, man.
That's
They're just
scary.
shaking. It's all good. It's all good. I'm sorry.
Poor guys.
Oh my God, I'm so embarrassed here. This is crazy. It's okay,
okay.
guys. ¿Qué pasó? They speak Rockets from Spain. I used to live in Spain, so we brought them over.
Oh, really?
So yeah, they only understand Spanish commands. My wife's from Spain. ¿Qué pasó, niños? Baja.
Oh, I love That's awesome.
Vamos a bajar. Anda. Vamos a bajar. It's okay. It's okay. Stay right here. Okay. Gosh, sorry for the interruption. All right. Let's get back to what we were doing here.
Don't worry.
I appreciate it. We're not live here. I don't have that big studio. We record at the home.
Yeah. Look, it's all good, dude.
Oh, let's talk about your show a little bit, because that is like something that's just it's broken through, man, to be frank with you. It's how I came across it too. It just sort of jumped on the scene and has become this huge movement, in my opinion, at least in my atmosphere, my world. And I really think, and I want to hear what y'all's purpose was, and if you still think that purpose still exists, today of when y'all started it. But I want to tell you guys why I like it. The reason I like it, and I think a lot of people like it, is I do, I hear you guys say, well, we give both sides and we be fair, and that's all great. And I love that. And that is a good reason I like it, but that's not actually the main reason I like it. The main reason I like it is because y'all present the information in a way that I can make my own decision. So yes, I get to hear your opinions, and that's great, but I get to make my own decision. That's the kind of news I like to watch, right? Because that makes sense. Y'all provide enough information that I can kind of get it my own. And again, I do get to see both sides of it. So that's a bonus. That's a
Right.
top for me. So yeah, again, my question is, when y'all started, what was the purpose of the show? And is that still the purpose of the show?
The purpose of the show, and Krystal said this once, was what if we hated each other less and the elites more? And that's the way we stick to it, which is, look, like, we both agree on what are the forces that are destroying the United States of America. Wall Street, capital, concentrated power in the hands of an elite class that doesn't just include government, but government is in there, who are out of step with the rest of America. Now, you can argue all day long around cultural issues and about all this stuff, and sometimes we do. We do it on the show sometimes. But the most important thing is to reveal, and is to show, both on the right and the left, the many elements of American society, business, government, tech, culture, Hollywood, elsewhere, which is corrupted by an influence which does not have your interest at heart. And so I try incredibly hard, like kind of what you were getting to, I try so hard to explain in very plain spoken English. Because like I said, you have to be here for a while to know this lingo and to know what somebody really means by something, and to just have like a back catalog of information about like, oh, so-and-so did this a couple of years ago. So whenever they're a hypocrite on it, you can be like, hey, wait, I remember whenever you said X. And when the media is so obsessed with pre-baked conclusions, what you were getting to when you just said that is you're sick of somebody just presenting to you a narrow fact pattern of which there is only one discernible conclusion. On CNN, Trump is bad. On Fox, Trump is good, right? What you want is to say, there are these crazy Democrats and Republicans who are advocating for this position. There are some fringe Dems and fringe Republicans who are advocating against it. And your interest as an American citizen should probably lie somewhere else in there. And here's like some polls and some facts and some studies and some other stuff which you'll never hear elsewhere. So I try very hard also, so does Krystal, to bring in polling, to bring in studies, to bring in experts, to talk to people who really know what they're really, because it's not just me. I mean, look, everything that comes out of my mouth, I try and at least have it be informed by something that I recently read or a life experience or something like that. And I think always about people who are so fed up and disaffected with the system. I would say that's the majority of the people who watch my show. They hate everything else, which I think is great because I hate everything else. Yeah. And so I finally found a community of people who are like-minded and who really look. I mean, if your job, you're in food, and you're a chef, like you should be focused on your work.
Yeah.
But you're an American and you're a Texan and you want to understand how different policies are going to affect you and how to actually get what you want. And you probably have a visceral feeling in your gut, things are not right. But a lot of us don't know why. And so to me, that's my job, right? Like my job is to be like, you're not crazy for feeling the way that you do. Here are the reasons probably that you do. Here are some things that I think that we could do about it. And then Krystal will propose, here's some things I think we could do about it. But what I think most Americans want is to say, I've got crazy amount of debt. Why does nobody talk about it? Or somebody says, I can't get married because I can't afford it, right? That's wrong. Why does nobody talk about that? I want to have kids, but I can't afford to do so. Isn't that your whole purpose in life? I can't do that. I want to have a business, but I've got $90,000 in student debt and it's never going to go away. Is that my fault? Right? And so much of the media and the political system is all bent around telling you it's your fault that you're in this situation. And Krystal and I's, of course, position is no, it's not your fault at all. It's their fault. They put you in this position to milk you dry so that they could get rich. And for me, it's all about exposing what exactly that process, and again, showing you very realistically how it happened and what can be done about it.
Yeah, that's all I know. You guys absolutely, accomplished that. In my sense, it's just about getting that information. Let me make the best, informed decision. And honestly, hearing y'all's thoughts and, coming from the on the radar stuff of the show is great. That's my favorite part of the show. I think that's people's
Thank you.
Favorite part, right? Because it's a real, what it reminds me of? It reminds me of Bill Maher's New Rules when he just lays down at the end of the show.
O'Reilly used to do it too.
Yeah,
actually.
True. That's true. And I like that, just, getting to the point and telling us what's going on and just being real about things. And again, opening that conversation so more people feel open to having that conversation in their real life. Because I think if you watch regular media, and it kind of is true in a sense that there has been a lot of division the last 4 years since Trump took office. And so in many ways, I was never into politics at all until Trump came in, and all of a sudden it's just in my face. I can't avoid it. It's like, got to talk about it. Everybody wants to talk. People are divided. Family, right? I mean, it's family members not talking to each other. It's a little crazy,
terrible, man.
Unusual. But at the same time, look, I'm from Texas. You're from Texas. Like, I've grown up my whole life with people around me that think differently than me, and we get along just fine. In fact, most of my friends don't even agree with my liberal, whatever. They're conservative. I don't care. We still hang out and get along. I think Texas can actually show the rest of the country, we can get along, and it's not about disagreeing, right? Because we're always going to disagree on things. I think that's where people get connected on what are our differences. And you don't think that you don't agree with me? Canceled, done, get out of my life, blocked.
Yeah, man.
Right? That's crazy.
I think you're right, which is that there's a deep Texan element to this. I think for me, I grew up there. And so when people slime evangelicals, I'm like, look, I'm not evangelical, but like, I grew up with these people and this is not what they think, right? Like, you know what I mean? Or like, they'll be like, oh, these Republicans. I'm like, listen, like, I grew up in a very Republican town and I disagreed with them a lot, even though I'm now technically aligned with them, but they're not bad people. Most of them just want, to raise kids, have a house, go to school, have some hobbies, barbecue, drink beer. Nothing wrong with that, right? That's America. And it's actually moving here that I never faced and saw more intolerance in my entire life. Like the amount of group, look, DC is 93% Democratic. And if you want to talk about like the culture circles like I have to run in, like it's crazy, man. Like, oh, you think this racist canceled, no, you're not allowed in polite society. People scream at you, accost you while you're having dinner at a restaurant, that type of thing. It's absolutely insane. And it's one of those things where it's just reinforced, not just by groupthink. It's like they really think they're better than you. And I think that the thing that bothers me most is I'm like, most of you are like miserable. And actually, a lot of the people that you think you're better than, they're much happier. Like I said, I grew up there. Like they're happy people. They go to church or they hang out with their friends or they go out to eat and they're not thinking about you. You're thinking about them.
Yeah.
And you're trying to change the way that they live their lives. It's just like the most anti-American thing that you can really think. And it's all reinforced by the university system, by our popular culture, by who, thinks they're elite versus elite. It's just like there's so many different narratives that play into it. And I just always think about where I grew up and I'm like, it's, like it's nice. They're nice people. Like you need to stop demonizing them. Like they're just like you. Or in many cases, I think they're a lot happier than you, but you can't say a lot of that here. It's tough.
Yeah, that's crazy. I can't imagine it's being being out there and having again, it's crazy to me to just push somebody to the side because they don't agree with you on anything really. I mean, unless it's just something crazy, right? Like pedophilia or so. Someone's like,
sure,
oh, yeah. Pedophilia is awesome. You're like, okay, then maybe we should.
We're like, okay, you are canceled. Yeah, that's fine with me.
Maybe we can talk. But if somebody's like, oh, I think we should vote for this policy, or I like this candidate, or I mean, what the hell? It's the craziest. Yeah, it's just a crazy. One quick thing I do want to that I agreed with earlier. You said about the businesses, and I do want to say this. We have talked about this on our podcast a lot, and and a lot of my friends are local business owners here, so I know what they're going through. It's been a disaster for the last 6 months, and you mentioned that about 25% and running on 100. That's absolutely true. Look, most restaurants or food businesses, just breaking even is success. Yeah. We high five each other when we break even. That's like, dude, we paid all the bills. Like, and you got to line out for people. So, I mean, talk to Aaron Franklin, right? It doesn't always equal this massive amount of money. So, yes, I think the real issue that business owners had was something you mentioned, which is, look, we don't have a problem shutting down, but we need support if we're going to do that. Now you're asking us to do, to make all these things and there's no support. So yeah, that has really been, that's been the issue with a lot of people,
Shameful.
It's shameful.
It's shameful. It's the United States government and our states put these people out of business. You owe them everything they lost. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's the thing. All these people, deficit hawks, but like, oh, the businesses should have planned. How the fuck are you going to plan for a once in a lifetime pandemic? What was 7 months we've been in this. Now the CDCs, we're going to be in here till the third quarter of 2021. No. And here's the thing. What is the social cost of so many of these people going out of business? What are they going to do? What are all the people that paid them going to do? They're going to be in bankruptcy. A lot of the people who work for them are going to drop out of the workforce. And what are their kids going to do? How are they going to pay for the food on the table for their kids? I pushed this from day one on the show. I don't know if you were watching back then, but I have been pushing from this day one for a payroll protection plan, which would have kept 80% wages. Basically would have given money to businesses enough for 80% of their payroll cost for their employees, plus their operating costs, right? This is what they did in Europe. They don't have mass unemployment in Britain for this reason, because they did exactly what I'm talking about here. They did this in Denmark. Now, look, we're a massive market economy, trillions and trillions of dollars more productive and whatever than Europe. But that doesn't mean that we couldn't do it. And we easily could have. It would have cost, somewhere in the order of $2 trillion. But I would posit that the current system where we have 30 million Americans today that you and I are talking on unemployment insurance. That's 1/10 of America, much more of America's labor force. How many? I just saw Yelp data shows that 60% of businesses which closed for coronavirus are now permanently closed. Permanent job loss, which is the amount of people in the economy who can expect to be unemployed 6 months from now, is going up at the highest rate in modern American history, maybe more so than the Great Depression. We actually have no idea. Now, I'm not talking about temporary job loss. I'm talking about permanent job loss. And I see a disaster. I see a country which is going to get hollowed out from the inside for the next 25 years because of the mistakes that we made. What are these business people going to do? What are these employees going to do? I think it is truly the greatest governmental failure since the early 1930s in the Great Depression. It's like repeating history all over again.
Wow, that's powerful. Yeah, I mean, I agree. The ripple effects, we don't even know really, right? The ripple effects, I know just locally, like just from, again, talking to my friends and who own these businesses and things, the things we talk about are, and this is stuff we don't see in the news. Look, what's happening is a lot of, staples of communities are closing, right? These businesses, we were in business for 100 years. They're all closing in Austin. Like literally every single one is closing. Yeah. It's a disaster. And the people that are surviving, not all of them, but a lot of them are breaking rules and doing things. So these are businesses you don't really even want to around in a lot of ways. So they're getting through and they're making right. And they're the ones that are going to come through on this. It's a very peculiar situation, I think
we're going to live in a nation of chain restaurants, which kills me. I don't want to live in a nation with chain restaurants. I don't want to eat at Chili's. I mean, no offense to Chili's. Look, it's a College Station staple. But if I'm going back to Texas, I'm going to Austin to go eat. I'm going to Houston. I'm going to Dallas. Like, let me tell you, I don't want to go. I don't want to live in a nation where every single small town is going to have exactly the same food. But that's where we're headed right now. Every community is going to have a Dollar Tree. Every community is going to have like Chili's, Applebee's, all these other things that are owned by private equity. There's going to be no national character. I mean, the thing that made Austin great was that it was Austin. There were institutions in the town. There was a real character to it. Houston too. God, the food in Houston is so good. So much international food everywhere, from Vietnamese, Indian food in Texas. What? I tell people all the time, second to India. Like seriously, it's really? The best.
I worked at an Indian restaurant.
Yeah.
Yeah, I worked at an Indian.
Oh, it's so good, man.
Years actually. Yeah.
I mean, it's incredible, and yet it's just all going away, and you can't come back from that as a country, or you can, but it takes a long time. And you need a leader who actually recognizes that. And I just don't see that right now in both parties, by the way.
100%. 100%. I will say this, this is kind of a funny thing, but speaking of food, I knew America was in trouble about food when they voted Taco Bell the best Mexican restaurant in America. That was like, are you kidding me? My coffee cup fell out like the slow motion, like you see in the movies, just crashed on my kitchen floor. Like, what? Taco Bell is that we don't know shit about food in this country.
Dude, listen, I've lived up here now for over a decade, and the lack of good Mexican food above the Texas-Oklahoma border is a national crisis because the stuff that people eat up here and call Mexican is a tragedy. Yeah. And even now, I'll eat some mediocre, food, and I still eat it because it's better than nothing. And somebody's like, "Oh God, this is incredible." I'm like, "You just don't know what you're talking about."
You just don't know. It's like barbecue. Right? It's like Texas barbecue.
It is. It really is the same thing. We have do you know Hill Country Barbecue? I don't know if it's a chain or not, but we have one here in DC. And everybody's like, "Oh, this is Texas," and I'm like, "Look, it's fine. Look, it is Texas style barbecue, and it looks like Texas, on the inside.
Yeah,
but it's not the same. It's just not the same thing."
No, not at all. But same goes for I lived in Philadelphia for a few years, and getting certain food there, the bread, right? You can't get that same bread down here. They say it's something in the water up there or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
No, I definitely agree with the Mexican food being a crisis in the rest of the country, for sure. Look, Saagar, I wanted to do a quick little. I want to talk about the debate. That's what I was going to ask you about, the Joe Rogan
Hit me.
Trump Biden debate that's being posed out there, and then Trump immediately responded, "I'll do it."
That was great.
I mean, look, I hate Trump and I think he's whatever, but he's funny. He says the funniest shit all the time, always laughing. I just see he's such a character. He's just like, I'll do it. So yeah, I'm curious. Do you think that's something that would be, plausible? And second would be, what other, debate would you like to see Joe Rogan do other people?
Look, I would love to see Biden and Trump on Rogan. I mean, I pushed for it. I actually even asked my friends in the press corps to ask Biden about it, but apparently he doesn't take a lot of questions. I'll just leave it at that, which kind of sucks. No, seriously, I messaged people who were on the campaign trail. I was like, hey, because I know these people. I used to work at the White House. And so so I've been pushing for that. Look, I mean, having been on Rogan myself, it was an incredible experience. He's the best interviewer that I've ever sat with anywhere. I do this for a living too. I interview people for a living. Never seen anybody else who's as well practiced and better at bringing out a conversation. I think all politics would be better if people went and sat with Joe Rogan. All politicians of all stripes. And the reason why I say this too is I know a lot of these politicians and they suck. And most people need to know that these people don't have anything to say which aren't pre-baked talking points. Yeah. And there are maybe 10 interesting politicians in America, maybe 10. And we have 535 on the national stage. So there you go.
That is low. That's a low bar for sure. I mean, I agree with you. I think Joe Rogan's great. I love his show. I saw your episode. Obviously, it was fantastic.
He lives in Austin. You should interview him.
In Austin now. Now he's in Austin. Yeah. We were trying to be the biggest podcast in Texas. Now I'm screwed. Now I just...
Yeah, you are screwed. Yeah.
Now I'm screwed. Literally, one of the biggest in the world. So, yeah. Who knows where he's in Austin? I've actually tried to ask around, where's he building his studio? Where? I'm trying to think where in Austin he would. Got to be in the hill country somewhere west of Central, because that's really the only good place around here to do it. But yeah, really excited he's moving to Austin. But yeah, that definitely would be an interesting debate. For sure, I would be all over it. 4 hours seemed like a long ass time to me. I don't know. Is that
not though? I was with him for 3.
Wow.
I sat with him for 3. It was like that. I swear. I thought I was like, oh, how long have we been here? Like an hour. It felt like nothing. He was like, well, we've been doing this 3 hours. So I guess I was like, what? 3 hours? Like, really?
I love it. Well, maybe you're right. Yeah. 4 hours. 100% would love to see that. I was thinking of other debates that, this is something that I thought, okay, if we plausibly want to make this happen, Joe Rogan should do a pre-debate with 2 other people to show that this could happen. Not like does that make sense? Like pick a couple people. Okay, let's.
Oh yeah, sure.
Let's get some other people. I was thinking Scaramucci versus Don Jr. I would love debate. Ted Cruz versus Andrew Yang.
I'd rather blow my eyes out. That I would watch. I would watch the hell out of that.
Right? Cruz, Andrew Yang. Yeah.
Ted Cruz and Andrew Yang. I would watch 100%. I had Andrew Yang on my podcast. He's awesome. Really cool guy.
Oh man, I would love to. I love that guy so much. Whether or not you agree with whatever he's saying, just again,
very smart, brilliant.
Right? It's just about you can respect who the person is, and I want to get back to that. I just want to get back to respecting people and having conversations, and that brings us into a topic I definitely want to get into, which is civil discourse and how that is just completely lost on us. And I'll tell you why. Something happened to me recently about the podcast that really threw me into this cancel culture, civil discourse. Mm-hmm. There's a local guy. I'll give a quick backstory. There's a local guy named Brandon Cash, and he's very well known here in Austin, not in a good way of being this racist guy, but he owns the biggest bar in Austin called Unbelievable, and it's off of Rainey Street. And he owns a few bars here in Austin. If you Google them, you'll see right away. Okay.
I've been to Rainey Street. It's awesome.
You've been to Rainey Street? Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah. Anyways, whatever, not looked highly upon. Well, I thought, okay, well, I'm going to get this guy on the podcast because he's never done an interview. I want to talk to him about these things and about these accusations, about everything. Is he really, this stuff? Mm-hmm. Is it whatever? And man, the moment I put that out there that I was going to interview him, now I'm a racist. Now I'm a this. Yep. I was scared. I was like, oh shit, is this going to ruin my podcast? I'm just trying to have a conversation with the guy, have a civil conversation with somebody. And Yeah, it brings me to my point. Is it crazy? I'm still doing the interview. Screw it.
Yeah, you should. Yeah.
This is what I think. It's deserved and fair, and it's going to cause some controversy here. But again, I just think those kind of conversations need to happen.
Look, are you better off knowing what a powerful person in Austin, Texas thinks or not? That would be my question to these idiots who are upset about this. Are you better off or no? What if you get him to say something horrible, which you then use to cancel him? Would you not want that to happen? I can't tell you how many times I've gone through this. In terms of people I've interviewed, in terms of people who want to interview me, because now they say I'm the racist fascist. Look, I interviewed Trump 4 separate times. Okay. Wow. And every single time they're like, why would you even do it? How could you not just sit there and spit in his face? Or how could you not lie? And I say, he's the number one, he's the fucking president. But number 2, which is you are using comments that he said to me to get outraged about it. Aren't you better off having the president's comments on the record in the public discourse? If you think they're terrible, make your case to the American people. It's not my job in order to serve as the filter or whatever. My job is to get him to say things which then you can use and decide in the public interest. That's it. And that's what your job is too. If your job is a Texas person, look, also it's Texas. I'm brown. I'm from Texas. There is a long legacy of racial discrimination there. Let's not be, crazy about it. I'm not saying it's a racist place or a racist state. Yes, I have faced racism in my life, as have many other people. Now, are we naive to just reject it? And we're probably even more naive not to engage people. And let's say in good faith, which I know you are, and just say, hey man, why do you think these things?
Yeah.
Like, just tell us why. And maybe you will get to the bottom of it. Maybe you won't. But I think Austin and your podcast, all of your listeners would be so much better off in order for that discussion to happen. I just think it's ludicrous. I mean, by not interviewing him, or is he going to stop owning property in Texas? You know what I mean? Like, no, it's ludicrous.
That's what I said. I said, look, guys, he's a major player in the city. We can't just turn our backs on this guy. Where do you think he's going? Like, hello, he runs like literally the sales of all Austin, like his liquor side. It's crazy. So yeah, but the crazy thing about him is everyone I spoke to that works for him, and they love the guy. So they have nice things to say about him. So I was like, this is weird. Something's not adding up here. So that's why I wanted to have this conversation, with him. But yeah, I completely thank you for saying that. That gives me a lot more confidence to.
My pleasure.
Go through with it. And again, I was going to go through with it anyway. I'm a stubborn motherfucker. I'm from Texas. Like, this is just, this is what I do. I said that, guys, this is my podcast. You want to do something else? Go get
who you want.
Right? Like, what the hell? Just don't listen if you don't want.
I love it.
Racist. It's like, look, I'm, my mom's from Mexico. So, growing up in Texas as well, like you said, look, there's racism here. I get it. But, the way I look, most people don't say anything to me till they find that out. And they're like, oh, okay, now I'm a little different. At least only really when I was a kid. It was such a weird, but kids are mean about a lot of things. So I never really,
kids are shitheads, man.
I was like, that kid doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. I don't know if he's being racist. He's just ignorant, right? This is just stupid. So yeah, I'm with you. The state is fine. There's no issues there. Again, my thing is just, we just need to have this conversation. I just don't see anything wrong with it.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. So great. Okay. I want to do something. If you could give us what you think are the 2 pros and 2 cons. Okay. I know we got to go. This will be the last thing we do. 2 pros and 2 cons for each of the candidates. We'll end with that of Donald Trump and Joe Biden, like moving forward.
Okay. So 2 pros for Trump. I would say, as chaotic as he is, it's always a good thing to make sure that the elites don't have certainty. And what I mean by that is that it's always a good thing to have somebody in there who scares these people to death, because when they're not scared, that's when they're screwing you over. Another pro of it is, look, I mean, I know you're liberal, but if you're a conservative, look, like if you're pro-life in this country, you should probably vote for Trump. And if you're pro-choice in this country, you should probably vote for Biden, just because of the stakes of what the election is about. A lot of evangelicals I know back in Texas don't like Trump, and they're voting for him for one reason. And I don't blame them. They're people of faith. That's what they value in their lives. Who am I to say otherwise?
Yeah.
In terms of the cons, look, Trump, a lot of the promises that he made in 2016 didn't happen. So I'm not particularly thrilled about that as somebody who liked a lot of those promises. And then the other con too is that chaos has a dark side, polarization of everything. Look what's happening right now with the vaccine. Only 51% of Americans say that they would take a coronavirus vaccine. I think it's a disaster, right? I think it's a total disaster. And I blame Trump for a lot of that, for politicizing a lot of what's happening here. In terms of Biden, I would say the con to me is the guy is basically just going to continue the Obama administration's policies. And I would say there's a reason that we've all voted for Donald Trump in 2016. And do you really want to go back to that system in which, you know, things seemed fine, but underneath the surface were exploding? Another con is with Biden is that the guy is so committed to a vision and an idea of America that we do not live in anymore. He's very much like 1970s, 1980s ideas. It's 2020. It's a 78-year-old man. And I'm not saying he's like incapable of doing the job. I'm literally saying like the guy has got the mindset that it's 1985. It's not 1985. We can't have our politics be that way. That's always something I've been against. I'm so wish more younger people would get in, but I understand why. The pros for Biden is calm. I think Biden is a calming figure. A lot of people are sick of this shit. They just are. And I don't blame them, which is that most people just want to live their lives. Most people want to think less about politics. What you were just saying about how you're never into politics and then people, all of a sudden Trump got elected and everyone's into politics, that's probably miserable for you and a lot of people. And a lot of people don't, people hate it.
Yeah.
But I'm the guy who loves to argue, but that's me. I recognize that, I'm not the norm here. And most people just want to live. And I think that if you're in a certain income and you have a certain, if you're well off in life, you're going to be just fine under Biden and you'll return to that. And the other pro I would say for him is that Biden has better instincts than the entire progressive left. As in that, like, they're like, defund the police. And he's like, no, we're not going to do that.
Yeah, I agree.
Like he's like a normal guy in a way that a lot of these people are just not. And that is his greatest strength in this campaign. So There you go.
Wow, that's a great. This is why I love listening to you, man. Just a real assessment, no bullshit, no this, no that. You're willing to say something nice about the other guy, right? And willing to look at your own and say something negative, if you will. I love that, man. I love just looking at the truth, for trying to find the truth on things.
Well, thank you, man. I appreciate you having me, really.
No, man, this has been an amazing conversation, and I apologize again about my dogs, man. I'm sorry. They're my world.
It's hilarious.
World, and they're still right here, just like poor guys. So anyway,
give them both a hug.
Are you kidding me? They're gonna get lots of besos y abrazos rest of the day. So again, man, thank you so much. I know you got the rest of the stuff to do.
Sure thing.
Watching the show and doing the stuff, and we'll send an email out when the episode goes out. It'll probably be a week or so.
Great.
And thank you so much. My best to you, and my best to Krystal as well. Good luck on the show, and good luck with everything, man. Thank you so much.
Thanks, man. I'll see you later.
The Lone Star Plate podcast is produced by Texas Real Food. Go to texasrealfood.com and you can search your city for stores, butchers, restaurants, farmers markets, and more who are using fresh, artisanal, organic sources. It's a fun site that brings all natural options all together. I hope you enjoyed this episode. For more information, go to thelonestarplate.com. I'm your host, Patrick Scott Armstrong. Until next time.